Hi there. Thank you. Is this working? Can everyone hear? Okay. Thank you for the round of applause. Thank you. Very nice. Thanks so much. Delighted to be here today as the Solent Cluster, and hopefully some of you had a chance to come to our stand down on the main floor there. If you haven't, please do drop by and come and have a chat with us. We presented on our Solent Cluster yesterday to talk about the opportunity. We think it's a fantastic opportunity for the UK, but certainly for the south of England, and the key opportunity to decarbonise the south of England as well. We launched a socio-economic report back in November, and there's copies of that available on our stand as well for you to take away or access it on our website. And we're keen to talk about those metrics that came out of that study, and they're focused really on 6 anchor projects that really fuel some really, really good numbers to transform our local economy and the wider southeast, and support that transition to a lower carbon economy. They're focused on hydrogen production, sustainable aviation fuel, and carbon capture. And we'll talk a little bit about those as we go through the panel presentation today. So just a bit of an intro. We'd intro everyone on the panel, and if we start with Michael, introduce yourself.
So, morning everyone. I'm Michael Foley. I lead ExxonMobil's low carbon solutions business in the UK.
Hi everyone, I'm Jack Lewis, co-founders of Adamode, and we're supporting the cluster on the local industrial decarbonisation plan.
Morning everyone, I'm Clarke. I head the policy team at SGN, who are a gas network in Scotland and the south of England that support the Solent Cluster.
Hi everyone, I'm Claire Woodward. I'm head of hydrogen project development for RWE in the UK.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. We'll get into some questions for the panel members, and we'll try and leave some time at the end for some questions from the floor as well. I talked about those anchor projects, and in terms of those anchor projects, the metrics they fuel, we'll see about 11, just under £12 billion of investment coming into our area for those projects. Every time I speak, there's a round of applause, but I'm sure that will stop in a minute. I'm sure it's not related. We'll raise productivity to the UK economy of around 4.4 billion. And when we think about the Solent economy, that's only a £31 billion economy as well. So a massive uplift to productivity in an area that lags behind on productivity. We'll sustain 70,000 jobs. Of those, around 20,000 will be new jobs. Really important for our young people looking at careers that will keep them in jobs for the whole of their lives as well. So some really exciting numbers. So Michael, if I can turn to you first. In terms of those sort of 70,000 jobs, how will those 70,000 jobs be identified, and how they come to fruition?
Thanks. Before I get to that, I've got to explain 2 things.
Okay.
Because we had this debate that not everyone knows where the Solent is. And you were going to explain that.
I haven't
missed it. So I'll explain. Those who don't know, Solent is really sort of around the Southampton, Portsmouth region, the south coast of the UK. The other thing I'll explain is why do we call ourselves a cluster? And for those who are not familiar with the government's industrial decarbonisation process, they encourage clusters to form around 6 major industrial areas as the first stepping stone towards net zero. Because if you can decarbonise your high-emitting industrial clusters, and in those clusters have both CO2 storage, hydrogen production, sustainable fuels, they enable kind of regional decarbonisation to happen. So the reason we're called the Solent Cluster is both geographically where we are, and I think what we'll hopefully talk about today is how we've come together as a group of both kind of companies and universities and enterprise partnerships to really find kind of a regional opportunity that can help more broadly just the companies that are investing. Your question, Stu, was on the job. So maybe before that, just explain a little bit about ExxonMobil's role in the cluster. So we own and operate the Foley refinery, which is near to Southampton. It's the largest refinery and petrochemical complex in the UK. Today supplies about 20% of road fuels, supplies jet fuels, manufactures a lot of chemical products that you use in your everyday life, including butyl rubber that lines your tires, for example, to keep the air in. We also manufacture lubricants. We employ about 2,000 people and have about over 200 supply chain companies that we support. So a big role that we have. ExxonMobil is looking at investing in offshore CO2 storage, hydrogen production, and sustainable fuels, and that, I'd say, sort of provides an anchor of investment to help kind of really start and the ball rolling on the opportunity in the Solent. So how do you get to 70,000 jobs, of which potentially 20,000 are new? Well, these are billion-dollar projects that are going to take us a decade to deliver. And when you invest in billion-dollar projects, you need a large workforce to deliver that, and that workforce needs a lot of things to happen around it. Think about the accommodation, the feeding, the other things that you are going to require to deliver that sort of scale of project in the Solent. So in the near term, that large-scale private investment brings a lot of kind of construction and manufacturing jobs. And in the longer term, we then have operational jobs, because a lot of this will be new and things that we're not doing today. The 12 billion reflects kind of a joint investment in the whole region, of which ExxonMobil is looking to potentially play a large part.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks ever so much, and thanks for the clarification on the air, which I was supposed to do. Joss, I was going to come to you next, actually.
Yep.
It's slightly out of order of the panel, but from SGN, really key member of our cluster, and in terms of one of our anchor projects is around hydrogen production in the area. Can you tell us a bit about the H2 Connect project that you're working on?
Yeah, I can. So as a gas network, I think people predominantly think that we supply domestic properties. Anyone here that's got a gas boiler at home, lives in the south of England, very likely that SGN provides the network connection into your home. Beyond that, actually in the south of England, we also supply gas. 40% of the volume of the gas in our network supplies the industrial and commercial sector across the entirety of the south of England off pretty much the same network. So our kind of challenge as we head to net zero is how do we transition both the domestic customer base and the industrial and commercial customer base off natural gas onto a more sustainable energy source. Now, some of that is kind of in the future, but what and how we actually transition the network live is kind of part of the question. But the H2 Connect project is looking, I think, squarely at the industrial and commercial sector. Now, what we know we're going to have or we'll need is significant amounts of production in the south on hydrogen. We know there's a large amount of demand, and we know we'll need a large amount of storage as well. So the H2 Connect project is effectively a new pipeline that will come down south from National Gas's Project Union project and start to build out resilience and into the south of England. So if you think in effect from Oxford, then move south across the Solent Cluster to Poole in the west, and probably right now we're thinking about Portsmouth in the east. So sort of initial phase would build a network that would supply hydrogen to I&C customers in the south of England. I'm currently in sort of latter end of our sort of feed study with the project, looking at what the optimized pathway is for that. And as we kind of progress through the rest of this decade, and as the cluster progresses, we'll move that project forward and hopefully give some security to the I&C community, the industrial and commercial communities to the south of England, that they have options to decarbonise their energy source in the future.
Great, thanks, Joss. In terms of the Solent Cluster, one of the real benefits of clusters is actually bringing people together and convening like-minded businesses, organisations, academia. And that's really important when you've got opportunities to bid for funding or collaborate on projects. And one of our first opportunities to do that as a cluster was through the Local Industrial Decarbonisation Plan, LIDP for short, which will produce a roadmap for decarbonisation in the Solent. We've set off on that journey, on that project this year, and we complete it by December. One of our key partners is Jack from Ada Mode. Jack, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the Local Industrial Decarbonisation Plan project, your role in it, and how that research will help net zero across the Solent region?
Yeah, sure. So Thank you. So yeah, firstly, I guess it's worth mentioning that we're fortunate in the Solent Cluster that there's, I think, 140 odd members, which enables us to be quite collaborative in what we're doing. And the project, which was recently begun informally and sort of is funded by partly by DESNZ, to develop a plan for industrial decarbonisation of the Solent, involves a number of different partners and companies that form part of the cluster. So we've sort of inherently built in some complexity into this project, which I think is really, it sort of pushes it above what's been done before, to sort of manage the interactions between large infrastructure owners and operators like Exxon, and then smaller local manufacturers, and creating that distinct relationship between the two, and driving towards a plan that can be enacted to both support the regional development of decarbonisation strategies, but also benefit economically the local manufacturers and operators, is sort of a key aspect of what we're doing. The plan, or the project, I suppose itself, is to create a plan by the end of the year to outline the route to industrial decarbonisation for the Solent, so encompassing all those different aspects. So we as a company, Adamode, are sort of part of that. We're, I guess, acting a little bit as the glue between different operators and owners of infrastructure and the DNOs and the gas networks. And our specific role is taking a lot of the data and doing a lot of the modelling to form a vision of different scenarios based on quite detailed interaction with the different partners that I mentioned. We're also working quite closely with University of Southampton, where we're focusing on the sort of technical assessment of different technologies. So how things like hydrogen and carbon capture may unlock different opportunities for manufacturers and operators in the region. How things like the installation of PV or the exploration of geothermal energy might reduce carbon emissions from certain areas. We're focusing on modelling those scenarios, but we're also coupling that analysis with the work that the university are doing, which is a slightly broader look at the economic and socio impacts of the different scenarios that we produce. So it's quite a holistic approach to energy monitoring. It's sort of grounded in a lot of work that's been done before, so it's not totally novel, and we were sort of cognizant of the fact that might sort of invalidate some of the outputs, but it's grounded in a lot of work that's been done before, things like the future energy scenarios that National Grid do, to then really set a pathway for large operators and everyone in between to create a plan that can be delivered by them. So we were really aware not to generate some esoteric, sort of hazy ambitions that, look nice in a report but don't really mean much for local operators and local manufacturers and businesses in the region. The aim is to create a tangible tool that accompanies the report, to really support their decision making in the future from now to 5 years to 2050 to make a real difference. So I think the sort of complexity of the project is sort of inherently good for driving decarbonisation. It makes us think a bit differently to how projects similar to this have been done before. The region is a great microcosm of, I guess, UK energy, with the coast, the large emitters, a mixture of manufacturing and sort of quite a diverse geography. So now it's a case of sort of putting everything into place and making the right decisions throughout the course of the project to set some real tangible outputs that people can use and informatively to make a difference.
That's great. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, I think this is really exciting for us because it's an opportunity to show that the Solent Cluster is actually much broader than the sort of anchor projects that we've initially outlined, and there's an opportunity for the smallest companies and researchers and etc. to get involved. And the key part of the LIDP, the Local Industrial Decarbonisation Plan, is to actually share that knowledge as well. And actually across all the local industrial decarbonisation plans across the UK, I think there's between 8 and 10. There's a knowledge share going on as well. So this isn't an effort from just the Solent or the south of England. Actually, we recognise we're all in it together and we can all learn from each other. So we're really excited about it, and it's really good that we're able through the Solent Cluster to convene all these different partners, and we'll be sharing that for our regular network sessions on our website, in our newsletters. So there's a real sort of call to action to get involved, really, because I think there'll be a tangible benefit for anyone who does get involved in our work. Claire, just sort of moving on to the end of the panel before we open up for some questions from the floor. I know you were keen to talk about green developers and how they can get involved in the work of the Solent Cluster, and what are the main opportunities and obstacles potentially for them.
Thank you, Stuart. So I think one of the first main opportunities for green developers would be, of course, in green power generation. I think this would realistically in the area, so not just the Solent Cluster, but the entire area that could then serve the Solent Cluster would be offshore and solar development in the region. I think one of the things that would be needed in the area is a good grid infrastructure. Of course, if green power were to be developed in the region more. If we've got green power generation, then that leads then into green hydrogen production. I think by the very nature of the Solent Cluster, and you've got a cluster of emitters in the area, you've got emitters in the region that could benefit from a green hydrogen. Not just the main, Exxon facility. I do think from what was said here from SGN, there's a network also of hydrogen going to go in, hydrogen pipelines. Project Union are going to also be branching down to the region as well as the H2 Connect pipelines. So I think there's a lot to be had for green hydrogen development in the region. Of course, we've got blue hydrogen as well that's being developed in the region. Off the back of that, there's carbon capture. So for developers in that area, there's links for the carbon capture network in the region. I think there's also one of the main opportunities for green or blue hydrogen is the opportunities that the government have got in place. So for green hydrogen, the hydrogen allocation round 1 last year shows that there's some green projects that are going to be built and progressed in the UK. The recent hydrogen allocation round 2 that closed 2 weeks ago was incredibly oversubscribed, which I think shows in the UK for green developers that the industry is a serious industry and the government are backing those projects. So I think that just the frameworks, the policy that's in place for the UK can give green developers some confidence as well in their projects. And then finally, of course, if you've got hydrogen, you've got your CO2 networks, then there's the sustainable aviation fuel development opportunities and other e-fuels, which in the very location of Solent, we're close to Gatwick Airport, Heathrow Airports, there's other airports in the region, and of course it's very good positioning for the maritime industry as well, so it can further decarbonise those industries as well. So really the cluster is ideally positioned for green hydrogen developers. What would I see as anything that could make any obstacles to that? I think if you've got any development projects, I'm speaking technically, is land, water and grid. For me personally, as a hydrogen developer, I think our biggest obstacle at the minute is grid, but I don't think that that's not unknown to anybody in the UK. So I think that could be the biggest obstacle for green development.
Hey, thanks, Claire, and thanks everyone on the panel. One of the things we'll open to the floor for some questions in a moment, so please do think about some that you may want to ask. Just ahead of that, I think one of the things that I think certainly excites us around the opportunity is the opportunity for the young people as well in the area and the skills opportunities. We've got an Institute of Technology that's recently opened in the area, so that's around those technical skills that will be needed. I know certainly when we've been to the ExxonMobil facility around some of the challenges of recruitment in some of their roles. So I wonder if anyone from the panel, not looking at anyone in particular, has got any reflections on that talent pipeline that we need to develop and how having a Solent cluster can support that.
I think that's a really important point, and one of the real advantages of coming together as a cluster is that, I think we're all facing kind of challenges around kind of workforce and the right skills and how the skills develop. And what we need to do is actually look all the way to kind of the start of the education system today. And by bringing together entities that have different competencies and skill sets, working with the university and other local institutes, we can think about how we're getting to the young kids and really getting them motivated about the jobs that are going to be in the region. I think one of the things about the industrial cluster program in the UK is a lot of the areas where we're looking to invest are deprived and have lost a lot of industry over time. And so actually we need to find a way to motivate people about what their future potential could be in these areas.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. Anyone else? Claire, did you want to?
I was speaking to someone recently about this and the skills pipeline coming in, and younger people in schools, their desire to work in, they understand climate change is going to be their responsibility as they get older. But I think something that is key, and I never thought about this. You speak about to children about what they're going to do in the future. What degree are you going to do? What A levels are you going to do? But I think something that is key that we need to do is speak to people in schools and talk about their desires. So their desires to work in climate change, to work in sustainability, and then work backwards with them to say, that's the end thing of what you want to do. So let's go backwards and see how physics or chemistry or sustainability could then link into that. And I never really thought about it like that before, because you always say to your children, do you want to do maths and physics or do you want to do history? But it's actually looking ahead and seeing how they can help the future and then work backwards to how they bridge that gap. And that's something we're working with. There are providers that do that in schools, and then they go and speak to children to do that. And I think that's a really key thing that we need to be able to do to help people come into the industry.
Yeah, and those decisions are made really, really early as well. So the younger you can get in, which I think you sort of said, Michael, as well, just is really important. Okay, brilliant. Open to the floor for some questions as well. Yeah, if you could just sort of say who you are. I think a mic will come to you, say who you are and then where you're from, and let us know your question, please.
Can't hear you.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's on. So, right, great. Thanks very much. Ed Gemmell, I'm the leader of the Climate Party nationally in the UK. On the website of the Solent Cluster, it talks about a 90% reduction in CO2 emissions by 2050. Okay. It doesn't talk about 100%. I'd like to know why that is. I think a secondary thing is, on the basis that the IPCC report that came out at COP26 told us that our carbon budget for 1.5 degrees is totally shot in 2028, I'd like to know how you, as supposedly a net zero cluster, actually justify going at 2050, which is going to be too late for all the young people we've been talking about, and actually too late for most of us in the room.
Okay. Thanks ever so much. Is this back on? Yeah. No, thanks ever so much. I mean, one of the sort of key headlines that's in our socio-economic report from those anchor projects is around a 42% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from 2022 levels in 2040. We think that's quite ambitious and achievable. I don't know if anyone else in the panel has got anything else to sort of say.
Well, yeah, I guess maybe I apologise if I didn't quite follow the question. I guess there's one around sort of, and maybe I'll paraphrase it, pace and what we're doing to try and get there. And I think a part of what you're seeing was try to do as a cluster, and what we're all kind of working with the government to do is find a way that we can all move together and make the necessary investments, given the time frame we're looking at, kind of reducing emissions. I think what you heard some of the panel say is what that takes is a really thoughtful way to getting the optimum solution. Yeah, we can all move individually. I think we're going to get a much better solution for the region if we can move together and think about the combination of things, and that's what we're trying to do.
It is on. Okay, yeah, thanks for that. I mean, actually what I'm saying to you is, look, 2030, 2035 is the target. There's nothing beyond that that keeps us safe on the planet. You're a cluster that's meant to be working on it. You presumably got all the expertise. Could you accelerate it to actually get to a world-saving opportunity, which is 2030 or 2035? And if you can't, what's the barrier?
Okay, we've been doing a lot of work on it. I think we've all been investing time and effort and resources. We've been working with the government to talk about how can we move things through faster and accelerate it. My earlier comment, these are really large, complex, decade-long type projects. And so I think we have to continue to work with all of us and with the government and with the stakeholders in the region to find ways to continue to move forward. That's what we're trying to do. I think 2030 is incredibly challenging. I think 2035 would be consistent with the way we can start to get to see material emissions reductions in the region. Yeah.
I think through the project we're doing on the LIDP, that was sort of set by DESNZ to the 2050 target. I mean, the project was framed around that ambition. Throughout the course of the project, obviously we're exploring different options and scenarios based on the collaboration with the different members of the cluster. So if it turns out that a viable option does present itself, then that may be, but we're sort of exploring that over the course of this year.
And I think we all recognise that business as usual isn't an option, and that's why we're coming forward with this set of projects, which is, it's a 42% reduction is huge. It may not be as much as you want. I understand.
I want something enough.
Thank you for the question, mate. Really do appreciate it. Hamish, I think you had a question as well.
Hello, I'm Hamish Wilson from company Azuli. We're a CCS project developer. Mine's somewhat related. Who's going to pay for this? You're not a charity, Exxon, and you're not track 1, track 2. How's this going to be funded?
Anyone? I guess sounds like it was somewhat directed to me. So, I think what's important to understand is that as we look at the way kind of industry and government has collaborated and consulted to work out how this works, is what we've kind of laid out is a way for private investment to really stimulate and enable the sort of scale investment, and the government through its business models helping to de-risk the markets which are nascent before those markets truly grow, and then you can avoid the government subsidy. I think it's going to take both private investment and the government helping to de-risk the market, stimulate that. All of us are investing time and people at the minute and moving towards much larger scale investment. What we all need is certainty in the policy and some of those marketplaces to be able to make those investments happen.
I think the question was, we're looking for the revenue, where's that? Yeah? Okay.
I'm happy to sort of come in on that. I mean, ultimately, from an energy system perspective, the revenue stream will come from customers' bills. And that's how the energy system of today works. The energy system of the future will work in the same way. I think the question maybe is that direction has been set by government, and the policy frameworks that we have in place have taken us to net zero in 2050. That vision, that idea, that has had cross-party support for a number of years, I think still has quite strong support from the electorate. Now, whether we've had that conversation collectively, political parties, industry, with customers about what it specifically means for them in terms of their bills, I think is a challenge. But ultimately, as we go forward, I think we've got to kind of realise we have to change. The costs of not addressing net zero arguably far outweigh the costs of actually kind of getting us to an energy system that does deliver zero or low carbon emissions. But there is a point there, I think, around having a kind of really grown-up conversation with customers about the impacts on their energy cost and what government might need to do to support them through that transition. I don't think it's a question of whether we should or shouldn't. It's kind of a question of of how, for me.
Maybe I'll just add on to that. I think the one advantage the UK has is, we talk a lot about global policy, the UK versus what's going on in the US. The UK has a mature CO2 price system. But fundamentally, that's going to ultimately create the marketplace here, is you're really offering a way to avoid that CO2 emissions cost. And so as that CO2 emissions cost changes over time, and as you introduce things like CBAM, which will address the carbon leakage, that's what's ultimately going to create a sustaining market. Today, there needs to be a bridge, and that's part of what we're working with the government on.
Good. Thanks, panel. Thanks for the question as well. I think we've got a couple more questions. We're going to run out of time in a moment. Let's see if we can get the last two questions in the last 4 minutes.
Hello there. Is that working? Yes. Because David Stringer from the MTM Agency. You mentioned SAF, aviation fuel. With Southampton's international importance as a global port, what opportunities do you see on the global maritime front?
Okay, thanks for that question. I think we missed the first part of it, but I think it was, we've got a sustainable aviation fuel project. Southampton's big maritime centre. What's the opportunities for sustainable maritime fuels? Yeah. Anyone want to come in on that? I mean, Solent is 25% of our economy in the Solent is maritime. We've got UK's second largest or biggest export port, cruise capital Europe as well. So it's massive. Massive. I think 2 of the largest container ships in the world were in Southampton at the same time this week as well. So there is a huge opportunity. You're right.
One very quick comment I'll make. The sustainable aviation fuel is really moving quickly because I'd say there's full value chain alignment on the solution. The maritime sector is not quite there in terms of the solution set and having a drop in fuel. So I think there is a real opportunity in the maritime sector, but I think as a sector, it needs to agree on what its solution set is going to be. When it does that, I think it's going to move very quickly, and the Solent is well positioned to help with that transition.
And again, a plug for the Solent Cluster. ABP, who operate Port of Southampton, are one of our members as well. So there's the room for a good dialogue there as well. Last question, I think, in terms of timing, please.
Right, my turn.
There you go. Yeah, you're working. Yeah.
All right, Charlotte Powell, Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. I don't work so closely with the clusters, so I'm really interested to what you guys are doing, particularly speaking to the hydrogen lady here. Sorry, I've forgotten your name already.
Claire.
Are you looking just at electrolysis for hydrogen? Are you looking at other sources of hydrogen? And how are you finding bringing the consumers together, so that transportation between generation to an actual consumer, and do you have users on board already?
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yeah, well, it
Yeah,
can be. I mean,
So I think I could speak with 2 heads here. So I could speak with a Solent Cluster head on, or I'm the head of hydrogen development for RWE. And so for Solent Cluster, there are clear emitters, large emitters where you could put a hydrogen production facility, either blue or green, in that area. And so you've got the emitters there. Personally, for RWE, we are only developing, my departments are developing green hydrogen production facilities. And I think in the future, blue hydrogen and green hydrogen will sit side by side.
Can I just clarify on the green hydrogen? Are you talking electrolyzers or other sources? I understand the blue is from natural gas, but there are a lot of technologies coming forward, so not just electrolysis.
Yeah, so for electrolysis, it's obviously there's use of electrolyzer, using green power and water to make hydrogen. And one of the I want to say best ways, well, I think what a lot of the projects are doing at the minute is supplying customers just over the fence. So it makes the costs of it a lot lower. And also the pipeline networks are not set yet. So that's where the industry is at the moment, is supplying over the fence to large emitters, to refineries and the like. So that's where the green hydrogen industry is at the minute.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just add to that if I can. I think there is a massive untapped opportunity for green hydrogen right now. We're currently paying in the UK about £1 billion a year for constraint payments on the electricity network. So that is in effect saying to generators, don't run, because we either don't have the network capacity to kind of move your power around the system, or they're running at times in the middle of the night where we don't actually need your power. Now, actually, if you put an electrolyzer in place to take that power and utilize it and produce green hydrogen, then actually you're giving customers something, they get value for those payments, and actually you can take that green hydrogen and start to decarbonize some of the industrial or domestic gas demand that's currently around. So we've done a report earlier in this year with Policy Exchange. We think we can get after that by 2030. Actually, that opportunity could be easily realized. Will it answer all the questions? Will it get us absolutely everywhere? No, but it will get us certainly a good few steps down the road, sure.
Yeah, and I'll echo those comments. Going back to your question, I think the challenge we face is scale and pace. And so we need all of the technology solutions. We need to be agnostic to technology and work the solutions that best fit different elements of what we're trying to do. And I think what the Solent Cluster does is bring all these parties who've got different views together to try and find those solutions.
Hey, thanks for the question. And if you pop down to our stand, you'll see us. We've got our anchor projects, and they're green and blue hydrogen projects listed in there. Thanks so much, panel members. Been great. Thanks so much for your time, the audience as well. Thank you. We're done.